you have such an interesting story of being, an athlete who hated school to the point that you dropped out partway through your senior year because you couldn't stand it enough to finish college. Your wife is homeschooled. I imagine more traditionally homeschooled as opposed to unschooled would be my guess. Unschooling's less.
Yeah, she was more homeschooled for sure. I mean, they did a lot where it was, traveling and things like that. So it was a rich homeschool, but it was homeschooled. It wasn't unschooled.
Yeah. And then you had your oldest in Waldorf school for a while pre-COVID, then brought him home to homeschool him, and then started going down these rabbit trails that eventually led you to unschooling. I'm really curious about the evolution of your own thought around educating your kids. I imagine, like, the way you talk about it, it sounds like it's been a discovery process of figuring out what is the correct level of freedom to give my kids and what is the correct level of structure. What did that process of going from Waldorf to homeschooling to unschooling philosophy look like? And how did you find the balance of, like, the correct level of freedom to give the children that you wanted to raise?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple things. One, trial and error.
Of course.
The fucking firstborn.
The guinea pig, that's me.
I think on a soul, that's me too. I think on a soul level, the firstborn says, all right, you guys can fuck up with me. The kids that come next will have it better. I think there's some agreement there on a soul level that the firstborn's kids agree to that. My son's 5 years older than our little girl. We did a lot of shit with him that we don't do with her.
I was 6 years older than my sister.
Yeah,
very similar experience.
It's a chunk of change, right? That's a long enough time to say what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, you can see the results of your experiments you ran. You're like, wait a second, maybe this wasn't such a good idea 4 years later.
And fortunately, we can see what was a phase, right? Like right now, our little girl's at 3 and she's like, no, everything's, no, I don't want to eat that. And it's like, you just ate this 2 nights ago. She's like, no, I don't want it. It doesn't look right. And we're like, okay, well, Leonard Sachs says you can eat this or not eat tonight. And there's a shit ton of science on why he says that and why parents 30 years ago knew to do this, but don't now. There's a lot of science on why parents who say we'll give you whatever you want wind up with obese kids that don't listen, right? So that's still the option. You can not eat if you don't want to, but we encourage you to eat and softly and gently hold our governorship on what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And it works. It works. Eventually she'll eat or she won't eat, but we hold her through that experience. I don't, I forget which book I was reading, but they say first thing we're taught is to spank, because we were spanked. And then we realized spanking doesn't work. So yelling's the next thing. I'm fucking pissed. Don't talk to me that way. How could you? Ram Dass says there's an air of how could you anytime you're upset, right? And it's totally true. How are you? I could never talk to my fucking parents this way. How are you talking to me this way? Don't do that. Yell, yell, yell. And they were like, well, that doesn't work. Third option is over-explaining. So now you get to give them the lecture. And you find like 30 seconds in, your kid's staring off into space like a space cadet. They're clearly checked out, and you're either still talking out of habit, or you ask them to pay attention. No, look me in the eyes. And then you're saying, no, look me in the eyes every other word because your kid's still checked out. You've over-explained too much. Right? Those are the 3 pitfalls. And we had that hard with Bear. We don't have that with Wolf. And she's a different person too. That's another factor. She's a she, not a he. That's another factor. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but it has been trial and error. It has been really through, everyone needs structure. It's funny because like when you start parenting, you're like, oh, structure is one of the most important things. What do they do with an old person in a nursery home? Structure. They got to know. You fucking watch like how do you help autistic kids? Structure. And in Rain Man, it's Judge Wapner's at 5. Judge Wapner's at 5. I can't miss Judge Wapner, right? The structure, if you fry the structure, it fries the mind. And somehow we believe because we don't have autism or because we're not young or old that doesn't apply to us. Structure totally applies to adults as well. And so when we have that, there's safety. And we see this like first day, a kid in a schoolyard, if you send your kids to school, he's going to stay pretty close to the teacher. Second day, they'll venture off a little further. By day 3 to 7, you'll see them working the whole yard. But that's a natural progression to a kid studying its environment and coming into being okay with it. Whatever your structure looks like, whether that's on a 118-acre farm like ours and it's homeschooled, unschooled, whatever that looks like, there's progressions to that. And one of the key ways to tell if your kid is satisfied or not is how upset are they? How are they talking to you, right? And like I said, the trial by fire has been with Bear for certain, because we know when we're missing something. We know when he doesn't have enough structure. A lot of times it comes around holidays. So we'll be doing less schoolwork. We won't be holding him to violin. We might miss a few jujitsu practices. His behavior is shit when that happens. When we are just checking small boxes each day, hey, you're going to make your bed. Morning time, we've got violin and a little bit of Life of Fred, and then you can read to dad at any point during the day when dad's off work. Check those boxes. We do that. We go to jujitsu together. He's a really good fucking kid. He's a great big brother. He's not antagonizing his sister. If he's antagonizing his sister, there's a need that's not being met. And likely it has to do with structure and how we are. So, and it could be my energy. It's not like woo-woo energy. If I'm worried about the move and I'm worried about job changes, I'm worried about all these things, that's going to bleed into fucking everyone in my environment. Whether I can put words to it or whether I recognize it or not, it's going to affect all of them. Mm-hmm. So again, fill my cup, come into my hollow quiet center, and then operate from there. That's the job. I have to have that mastered. I have to be the mountain energy. And if I can do that, then I can hold all the chaos just fine. But it is trial and error. And, we really were just experimenting that first year with Bear in homeschooling, and then came more to an unschool approach. And then now with his desire, he wanted to learn music. He got into music before anything else. He could read music before he could read pages.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he loves violin. And without paying for school, we can easily hire a tutor to come teach him violin once a week. And then we go based on that. Now that he can read, we're getting him different books. We don't need the tutor for now. It'll come to a different space where if he wants to really accelerate, we'll bring that back. But that's not necessary at this point. So there's an ebb and flow of structure and still allowing the gift of free time. And with that understanding, there are certain requirements, right? Like you don't just get to play with sister and dad all day long. Dad has to work in the morning. And you've got your checklist in the morning. And so they have their own calendars. And on that, you get a little T for brushing your teeth. You get a B for bed. You get to write all these things up there. And that shows what you did that day. And at the end of the day, they can say, wow, I did all this today. At the end of the week, they can say, look what I did all last week. And so something very gratifying. It's like putting a star in a notepad, right? Like how many stars and smiley faces did you get this week? It's gamifying it. But it's all for the right reasons. And it's not bribery. It's not anything else. It's just saying like, this is what's required of us. And there is something innately required of all human beings. There's no human being that gets by in a tribe who doesn't give back to the tribe. There's no human being that's in a take mode cancerously that survives in a tribe. Those people get fucking outed. And you can go through any historical reference on that where you look at how indigenous cultures operated. And they had things to weed people out of that. So you could come into more of a gifting idea of how do I contribute to the group? How do I contribute? What are my gifts and how do I give those back to the group? And what is it that I enjoy? And I've had conversations with Bear about that too. Like, I don't love folding laundry, but I still do it because it helps mama. And I do love vacuuming. It's kind of a weird thing that's highly meditative for me. So I got a fucking $1,100 cordless vacuum that makes vacuuming more fun. I don't have to unplug it and replug it. And now he's vacuuming and he enjoys it for the same reasons. The hum of that vacuum is meditative and it clean. Having a little dog, like that's something we got to do every other day. It's not like a once a week thing. It's pretty often. So like getting them involved for those and really seeing, one of the things you mentioned is, if I want my kids to do this, I have to practice it in front of them. Mm-hmm. They got to see dad do that. You can't just be, hey, I'm at work all day. You vacuum while I'm gone. Like, no, they see dad vacuum enough. They see dad doing dishes. Now Bear wants to come and rinse his dish before he puts it in the dishwasher. Basic stuff, leave this space better than you found it. Basic stuff. When we go from, and it's really hard for Wolf, but she's still getting it because this is how we do things, right? And when it's framed in that way, we know if we're going to move from one thing to the next, we have to clean up the game we just played. We don't leave that out. So we sing the clean up, everybody everywhere, clean up, everybody do your share. And that little ditty just goes through her head till she's singing it and she's helping us. She's no longer pissed off. She's just doing the cleanup song. Simple as that. So you can engineer things like that based on our own participation in it. Much easier to grab. I had a good buddy, and then I'll finish this thought, Dr. Mark Chang. Phenomenal guy, lifelong martial artist, trained under Dan Inosanto out in Santa Monica, who was Bruce Lee's main student. He's still close with Dan Inosanto. And a beautiful human, lifelong martial artist, very intelligent guy who's a parent as well. And he said he saw his dad do Tai Chi every day for 10 years, and he would laugh at him. And he's like, why do you do Tai Chi? And he goes, it's a martial art. And he goes, no, it isn't. And he goes, attack me. So at 10, he goes to attack his dad, and his dad launches him through the drywall. Doesn't hurt him at all, but he shows him like, this is a significant fucking martial art, and it matters. But more importantly than that, he saw him practice it for 10 years. Now he witnessed the power of it. And that's what got him into it. He said, I want to practice this. I want to know this skill. My son still doesn't do Tai Chi with me, but I do it for me, and he sees it. And at some point in time, he's going to say, why do you do this, Dad? And I'll say, I do it for these reasons. Try it for yourself. And then he may adopt that for himself. The dojo is also our yoga room. We've got 4 yoga mats. We got a yoga hammock and all the cool stuff to stretch and open up the body. Our kids join us sometimes, like Wolfie will do like down dog and 3-legged down dog, and then she'll just crawl underneath us the rest of the thing. She does things she can do, and then after that, she just crawls underneath this. But it's her witnessing us doing those things that is attractive. This is what my parents do. They live health and wellness. They don't talk about it, they live it. One of my favorite quotes is, don't talk about it, be about it. And I think that really matters for kids.